My name is Alex. I'm 31 years old, and I live alone in a cramped apartment in one of those buildings that feels older than its own bricks. The paint on the walls peels in curling strips, and the radiators moan like something alive when the temperature drops at night. My neighbors are ghosts in their own way, the kind you never see, only hear faintly through paper-thin walls. Conversations blur into muffled murmurs. Footsteps fade into the ceiling. But the walls? The walls always seem to listen. I've lived here for 3 years now. The rent is low, and the location is decent, so I never care much about the building's creaks and groans. In fact, I like the quiet. A quiet life means a controlled life. No surprises, no one moving my things, no strange dishes in my sink. I keep my schedule the same. Work, home, dinner, maybe a show before bed. A closed circle. That's why the first time it happened, I noticed immediately. It was late on a Thursday when I came home from work, worn down to the bone from dealing with clients who think deadlines are just polite suggestions. I didn't have the energy to cook, so I grabbed a leftover half pizza from the fridge. I set it down on the kitchen table, still in the box, and went to the living room. I remember sitting down, pressing play on a mindless series, and promising myself I'd eat in just a minute. That minute turned into hours. I woke up in the dark, my neck sore from the awkward angle I'd been sleeping in. It was morning. When I wandered into the kitchen, rubbing my eyes, I stopped mid-step. The pizza box was gone. In its place sat a pot of pasta, spaghetti in a deep red sauce, still faintly warm, as if it had been cooked not long ago. A fork rested neatly on the counter beside it. For a moment, my brain reached for the most logical explanation. Maybe I'd been so tired I'd gotten up in the night, cooked something and forgotten. But I couldn't remember boiling water or opening a can of tomatoes or even moving from the couch. I shook my head, chuckled under my breath, and told myself, guess I sleep cooked. Weird. But even as I sat down to eat, the unease stuck with me, a splinter in the back of my mind. After that first morning, I expected things to go back to normal. A one-off event, nothing more. But the second time it happened, it wasn't so easy to brush off. It was Sunday night. I made a quick sandwich before bed, ham, cheese, nothing fancy, and left half of it on a plate, planning to finish it in the morning. When I came into the kitchen the next day, the plate was empty, but in its place was a ceramic bowl of creamy potato soup, steam rising from it like it had been ladled out moments before. I didn't remember making soup. In fact, I didn't even have potatoes in the apartment. I told myself it was a strange coincidence. Maybe I had been absent-minded. Maybe I was drinking more than I realized. The brain can play tricks when you're tired. But the third time made it impossible to ignore. I brought home takeout one night, Thai noodles. Ate half. Left the rest in its box on the counter. The next morning, the box was gone, replaced with an entire loaf of bread, sliced perfectly evenly. Not only that, the knife was washed, the cutting board spotless, the crumbs swept away. Over the following nights, it kept happening. Meals I didn't cook, dishes I didn't wash, even groceries I never bought. And the strangest part? Whatever was doing it wasn't messy. No pans left in the sink, no scraps in the trash. It was always perfect. I tried to laugh about it, to keep my sanity. Well, I muttered one morning while spreading butter on mystery bread. At least I've got the budget-friendly ghost. But that laugh didn't last. There's a thin line between harmless mystery and something that feels wrong. And I was starting to cross it. By the fourth night, I wasn't laughing anymore. It wasn't just the food, it was the feeling. You know how, even in an empty room, you can suddenly feel watched? That prickling awareness in the back of your skull, like the air itself is paying attention. That's how my apartment felt now. I decided I needed proof. Before bed, I grabbed my phone, propped it up on the counter with the camera aimed squarely at the kitchen, and hit record. I even made sure the battery was full and the screen brightness low, so it wouldn't draw attention. That night, I had trouble sleeping. I kept waking up, listening for noises. Once or twice, I thought I heard faint footsteps, but they were so light I couldn't tell if it was real or just my mind. When morning came, I went straight for the phone. My hands were almost shaking as I opened the video file. It played fine until 2:17 a.m. The screen went black. No glitch, no static, just a sudden, perfect cutoff. I told myself it had to be a technical issue. Phones crash all the time, right? So the next night, I tried again. Different charger, different app, even plugged the phone into the wall to be sure it wouldn't die. Same result. 2:17 a.m., black screen. The food was different again, too. The plate of reheated lasagna I'd left out was gone, replaced with a delicate salad topped with sliced strawberries. I didn't own strawberries. I stared at that plate for a long time before eating. I told myself it might be dangerous, but my stomach growled and my fear didn't outweigh my hunger. It tasted fresh, sweet, perfect, but as I chewed, one thought looped in my head over and over. Who, or what, is in my apartment at 2:17 every night? I woke up on Wednesday with the strange kind of anticipation you feel before opening an unwanted gift. The dread of what now? I went to bed the night before, leaving a half-empty jar of peanut butter and some crackers on the counter. Nothing fancy. When I entered the kitchen in the morning, the air smelled expensive. On the table sat a perfectly folded cloth napkin beside a plate of golden French omelet, sprinkled with finely chopped herbs. A small basket of still warm croissants rested beside it, the kind with buttery layers that flake in your fingers. I stood there for a full minute, just staring. My fridge doesn't have fresh herbs. My pantry doesn't have flour. And yet, when I opened the fridge, it was like a stranger's kitchen. Wedges of imported cheese, a carton of fresh cream, jars of jam with French labels. Groceries I had never purchased. That's when the fear began to outweigh the curiosity. If someone was breaking in, it wasn't for money. It wasn't to take anything. They were adding to my life, feeding me, providing. The thought made my stomach knot. I thought about going to the landlord, but how could I even explain it? Hi, someone's trespassing in my apartment every night to cook for me. Yeah, that'd go over well. That night, I didn't set up the phone. Instead, I sat on the couch in the dark, pretending to sleep, my eyes half closed toward the kitchen door. I wanted to catch them, but sometime after 1:30, my eyelids betrayed me. When I woke, sunlight was already cutting through the blinds. The kitchen table was set with homemade blueberry pancakes, syrup in a crystal jar. Whoever it was, they knew I'd try to watch, and they still came. It had been almost a week since the first strange meal appeared. I'd grown used to the silent trespasser in the way you grow used to a toothache. You learn to live with it, but the pain is always there, pulsing under the surface. That morning, I shuffled into the kitchen expecting more food I didn't make. I wasn't wrong. There was a neat plate of steamed fish with lemon, served alongside roasted vegetables arranged like something from a restaurant. But this time there was something else. A small white envelope lay at the edge of the table, the flap tucked but not sealed. My stomach dropped before I even touched it. Inside was a folded note in slanted handwriting. Enjoy, my love. We'll be together soon. I read it once, twice, 5 times. My hands trembled more with each pass. The word love stuck in my head like a splinter. I hadn't been in a relationship for over 2 years. No flings, no dates, no one. The idea that someone was not only entering my apartment at night, but also believed we had some kind of connection made my throat go dry. I locked the door that evening, then double-locked it. I checked the windows, slid furniture against the balcony door. And that night, I didn't go to bed. I sat in the kitchen chair, in darkness, waiting. The hours crawled by. Midnight. 1:30. At 2, the building was silent. My heart was a drumbeat in my ears. At 2:15, I heard it, soft footsteps in the hall. Slow, measured. The doorknob turned. I gripped the arms of the chair, forcing myself not to move, not to breathe. The door opened with a quiet click. Whoever it was, they were already inside. The footsteps grew louder, padding softly across the kitchen floor. I could just barely make out the silhouette in the dim light from the street lamp outside. No mask, no gloves, not the shadowy stranger I'd braced myself to see. When she stepped fully into view, my heart lurched so hard I thought I might choke. Lauren, she looked exactly the same as the last time I saw her, maybe even better. Smooth skin, long chestnut hair pulled into a loose braid, that faint perfume I remembered from nights curled up on the couch together. We'd broken up over 2 years ago. The last words we exchanged had been sharp enough to cut, and after that, she disappeared from my life completely. Now, here she was setting down a plate of steaming dumplings like this was just another Tuesday night. She smiled at me as if she'd known I'd be awake. I told you I couldn't live without you, Alex. My mouth was dry, my thoughts a mess of questions and fear. How did you get in? I asked, my voice barely more than a whisper. She tilted her head like I'd said something funny. Oh, you always left away. You just didn't notice. For a moment, all I could hear was the faint hiss of steam rising from the dumplings. My brain couldn't decide which was worse, the fact she'd been breaking into my home for who knows how long, or the way she said it like it was perfectly normal. Lauren stood in the quiet kitchen, her presence both familiar and alien. She didn't look guilty, or ashamed, or even nervous. Just calm, like this was inevitable. I stayed in the chair, every muscle tight. You can't just come here, I said, my voice low. You can't, this isn't. She interrupted without raising her tone. You looked thin the last time I saw you. I couldn't stand the thought of you not eating properly. You always worked too much, forgot to take care of yourself. Her words were gentle, but every syllable dripped with possession. I wanted to tell her to leave, to never come back. But the truth was, I didn't know what she was capable of anymore. If she could enter my home without me noticing, feed me night after night without a trace, what else could she do? She picked up the plate and slid it toward me. Eat. You'll feel better. The smell of the dumplings curled around me. Savory, rich, perfect. My stomach twisted. I didn't move. We stayed like that, staring at each other across the table. Finally, she smiled faintly. I'll see you tomorrow night. And just like that, she left. No rush. No fear. The lock clicked behind her. I sat there until the sun came up, the plate untouched in front of me, steam slowly fading into the cold air. I didn't sleep after she left. Every sound, the creak of the pipes, the hum of the fridge, felt like a warning. I kept looking at the door, half expecting it to open again before sunrise. By the time morning came, my body was exhausted, but my mind was sharp with paranoia. I checked the locks again and again. I even slid a chair under the doorknob, like something out of a cheap thriller. I told myself I'd go to the police. But the words in my head sounded ridiculous. My ex has been secretly entering my apartment for a week to make me dinner. What proof did I have? A plate of dumplings and a note calling me my love. It would be my word against hers. And she'd always had a way of twisting reality until people believed her version. That evening, I decided to stay up again, but this time in the living room, where I could see the front door directly. I made coffee, sat in the dark, and waited. At 11:43 p.m., the doorknob turned. My heart jolted too early. The door opened, and Lauren stepped inside like she still lived there. She carried a grocery bag, the scent of fresh bread spilling into the room. Her eyes found mine instantly, as if she'd known I'd be watching this time. You're still awake, she said softly. Not surprised, not even annoyed. Lauren, you can't do this. You need to leave. She tilted her head and smiled, a slow, deliberate smile. You keep saying that, she murmured, setting the bag on the counter. But you never stop me. She didn't leave. Instead, Lauren began unpacking the groceries with deliberate care. Eggs, fresh herbs, salmon wrapped neatly in butcher paper. She moved around my kitchen like it was hers, like the 2 years apart had never happened. I stood in the doorway, every instinct telling me to take out my phone and call someone, anyone. But I didn't. Not yet. Some part of me was frozen, the same way you might freeze if a wild animal wandered into your living room, knowing that sudden movement might make it worse. You've changed things, she said suddenly, glancing toward the bookshelf in the living room. Your books used to be in order by author, not by color. The fact that she remembered that detail sent a cold pulse through me. You've been here more than a week, I said, the realization dawning heavy in my chest. She smiled faintly, her back to me as she lit the stove. Of course, I've been here lots of nights. Sometimes you didn't even notice. The air felt thinner. I noticed little things I hadn't before. The photo on my desk had been moved an inch to the left, the laundry basket in the bedroom turned slightly, a coffee mug I hadn't touched in months sitting clean in the cabinet. She wasn't just feeding me. She'd been inside my life, silently rearranging the quiet. And the worst part? She was looking at me now the way she used to, the way people look at something they already own. The night stretched long and dark as Lauren cooked, humming softly to herself like this was the most natural thing in the world, breaking into my life, my home, my mind. I finally sat down at the kitchen table, the plate before me steaming with something I didn't recognize but couldn't refuse. She watched me, eyes gleaming with a mixture of love and something darker, something possessive. "I'll never stop," she said quietly. "Not until you're mine again, completely." For a moment, I wanted to believe she meant the old us, the good memories beneath the bitterness. But then I saw it, the way she carefully sharpened a small, gleaming knife at the edge of the counter. The walls had heard everything. The silence had been waiting. And now, so was I.